Do you believe there is power in your story? A few short weeks ago, I shared my testimony at the Church at Azle on a Wednesday night, and I was so blessed. I feel such a heavy burden was lifted off of my shoulders. The mask was taken off, if you will. And the day after, I was trying to share it with my mom and a few other family members. And for whatever reason, the Facebook Live video was taken down by Facebook from the Church at Azle. So here I am. I want to share my testimony with you in hopes that it will encourage someone that God can really turn your mess into a message, your test into a testimony, your trial into a triumph. And I just pray that it's a blessing to you. So here's the title of my testimony: Where there is no battle, there is no blessing. And my prayer is that you'll get to know me a little better because I still at times put up a mask and hide who I used to be. I believe wholeheartedly that the battles we've gone through in our life prepare us for the war. And I'll share some of that throughout my testimony here. So I'm going to share with you 7 battles in my life. Sometimes I wore my armor. Sometimes I didn't even realize I needed to wear armor. And sometimes I wore my armor just to hide the wounds I had hidden behind it. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump right in and walk through some of the battles in my life. So battle number 1, isolation from family. I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, to a single mom. I was an only child, born out of wedlock. Wasn't really a troublemaker, but I'm what I would call I was a consumer of the world. Didn't really take part in a whole lot, just was there, if you will. I grew up in a 700 square foot apartment. We never really had a lot, but we never went without. My mom was my rock, my biggest supporter. She was mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, everything. She did it all. She was amazing, and I really, really look up to her. She's taught me so many life lessons. You know, as I've gotten older, I realized my mom was both mentally and physically abused throughout her life. She did whatever she could to fit in, but at times she was just simply ostracized. Through most of my younger years, my mom was a bartender, so we spent a lot of time at the bars. I had my first beer at 9 years old in the Denmark parade. It was kind of our way of life. We were good people, just didn't really know any better, and this is where we fit in. So during this period of my life, there was no God. There was really no family outside of me and my mom, and there was definitely not any community. So kind of what I did throughout my battles, that I've kind of summarized it for, at least for me, as a life lesson. So as a parent, do whatever it takes to provide for your family. Your children will follow your lead, good or bad. Battle number 2, church. So the church, I put in quotation marks, our family, we had simply let us down. Our family turned their back on us. This was my really only dealing with church folk, if you will, when I was younger. My family was raised Catholic, and my grandparents were strict Catholics, if you will, and they believed that if you were not married and you have children out of wedlock, that was a sin, and they treated that as you can no longer be a part of the family. So what that meant for Jason was we didn't do Christmas with our family. We didn't do birthdays. We very rarely interacted at all with any of our family through most of my younger years. And that's really baggage that I carry to this day, especially when I'm interacting with other churches, other denominations, just trying to be mindful, trying to just be respectful, if you will. My family loved big, but they just didn't realize how much it hurt our family, being me and my mom. So here's a verse I wrote down. 1 John 4:20. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. So here's how I summarized this battle. Sometimes people are just plain hurtful and don't realize it, as they feel they're doing the right thing because of their beliefs. I'm not here to bash any of my family. I just sincerely think because of their religion, they had a belief system that had very negative implications for my personal life, and it's part of my testimony. So battle number 3, no father figure. There's a lot of studies out there of the importance of a dad, of a father figure, of a loving role model. But simply, I had none. I had no real male father figure in my life. A couple men that, as I reflect back, played a vital role in my life were Gary. He owned one of the bars my mom worked at. He was a good guy, but his life revolved around serving alcohol to people and really wasn't the greatest role model for a young man like I was trying to become. Also had Dan and Bill, some of the babysitters I went to a lot when I was a kid when my mom was working. Dan's routine was finish the job, and before he came home, one of the first stops he made was at the bar. He loved his kids, but I think his priorities were just a little messed up, and it really plays a role, I think, into my life now, because I saw that for so many years. One of the things I heard Shane Tomlinson say a few months ago was, when you're a young man and you're empty, the world will fill you up. Even as a man, if you're empty, the world will fill you up. And it'll fill you up with whatever things you're seeing in your circle of influence. As luck would have it, at 13 years old, my mom would marry my stepdad, Jim, who was a truck driver, but it turned out he was an alcoholic. So he would drive over the road to California often, be gone for 10, 14 days, and then come home and just drink himself into a stupor. And that's really the cycle I had from 13 to 17 years old as a young man trying to find his way. And what it really led for me was I looked for an out. I looked any way possible to get out of that situation. My friend Ben went to a Navy recruiter when we were both juniors just to kind of see what kind of options he had. And long story short, instead of him signing the paperwork, I went with, and I actually signed up and he did not. Go figure, but I believe wholeheartedly that God had a plan, and he just placed an opportunity and opened a door for me through that recruiter to see and get out of that situation that I was in. One of the hardest things I deal with personally with my stepdad is he mentally abused my mom, and they were married for 18 years, and on his deathbed, he asked Christ into his heart, and he is in heaven. I really, really struggle with how a man who can be so hateful and it hurt my mom can just turn it all around with days and hours left in his life and be in heaven. It's a real struggle for me. I know God is the grace giver and he can heal all, but it's personally just a struggle that I deal with in my own life. So in 1995, I left for the Navy to go see the world, and they sent me to Grand Prairie, Texas. So God's got a plan. Remember that throughout this. Sometimes I attended a Catholic church because that's really all I knew, but I had no relationship at all with Jesus Christ. I wanted to see the world, and they sent me to Texas. So Proverbs 16:9, we can make our plans, but the Lord will determine our steps. You have to believe God has a sense of humor sending a Green Bay Packers fan to Dallas, Texas, right after the Cowboys have won like 4 consecutive Super Bowls. In 1998, I met my wife, Crystal. Where? Where did we meet? Go figure. We met at a bar playing pool. It's kind of funny as you look back, but I was doing the exact thing that I ran from. And I think as men, we often do that. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. But again, God had a plan. And I met an amazing woman, my Texas beauty, who I'm still married to this day. So here's the lesson learned. Oh, actually, let me back up. In 1999, Crystal and I got married. Again, we really had no church background, and in order for my grandmother to come down from Wisconsin to be part of our wedding, we had to get married by a Catholic priest. So that's what we did, and we got married on the base chapel by a Catholic priest who served there. So here's the lesson learned for this battle in my life. Who you hang around with matters. When you're empty, remember the world will fill you up. So battle number 4, infertility. From 1999 to 2003, we battled infertility, and I began to ask, why God? Why would you bring us together? Why would you make me travel halfway around the world to meet Crystal and then not allow us to conceive? You know, I really had no faith at this time. I had no understanding, no relationship again at all. And frankly, I wanted sex all the time. I remember when we met with I told you we got married by a Catholic priest, and we had to go to premarital counseling. And one of the questions they asked was, how many times do each of you expect sex in your marriage? And I wrote down every day, multiple times a day. It's just, I think, how men are wired. And I was simply just ignorant. I didn't really have any compassion at all for the needs of my wife. And it's a struggle. I became frustrated with Crystal through this process. And really, I became frustrated with God. And it's ultimately because I was a selfish young man who turned into a selfish, childish man. Then came the invite. And I'll just pause here for a second. All of us have circles of influence that we connect with. Sometimes we get wrapped around that the pastors run the church and they do everything. They have to be everywhere. They have to preach. They have to do funerals. They have to do all the inviting, bringing people to church. It's our job to find people in the world that need Jesus. We're called to. And I'm so thankful for Brian and Stephanie Epperson. They're a couple we hung around with when we were stationed in Dayton, Ohio. They invited us to Beaver Creek Christian Church, and it really changed our life, changed our perspective, and changed really our destiny, if you will. They introduced us to Jan and Jerry, who were absolutely amazing. They were our life group leaders. They were seasoned Christians. He was also, at the time, an Air Force major. And at this time, I think I skipped it. I started out in the Navy, and I got my college degree at night. So we actually had our first Air Force assignment as an officer in Dayton, Ohio. So I had a lot of respect for Jerry, which helps tremendously. He was a phenomenal man. In 2003, after battling with infertility, Crystal decided, hey, we should try and adopt. And after lots of conversation, lots of convincing, I finally said, sure, let's do it. But again, selfishly, I wanted to do it my way. And I grew up, my heritage is Polish. So my thought process is we'd go to Poland and I would adopt a Polish boy because Jason wanted to control every situation. Kind of the cool thing about this testimony is this book right here. It may not look like a whole much, but there's 7 pages in here where Crystal and I took pictures and made write-ups of who we were or who we had been, things we liked, things we wanted to do, some of our dreams and aspirations. And this is what was called our life book. And when we decided to adopt, this is the only thing that a prospective birth mom would have to know who we were. And this is really how we were picked. We used the same exact book for the adoption of Logan and Mason both. And now I've sleeved in here kind of my testimony. And it's just bringing back so many amazing memories, so many memories of God's favor throughout this whole adoption process. So the fall of 2004, Jerry took me to a conference called Promise Keepers. And I really didn't know what it was all about, but it was absolutely life-changing for me. There was 20,000 men there singing praises to Jesus, honoring. The message was so powerful. And at the end of it, I gave my life to Jesus along with probably 2,000 other men. And it was just a milestone moment in my life. So this is where this begins the start of the war. And really the war begins the second you profess your faith in Jesus Christ. We got plugged into a life group. We did everything together. And it was so vital for us because as a military family, we had no family at all in Dayton, Ohio. And the church really became our family. They loved us through the adoption process. They loved us through every kind of situation we were going through. And I'll challenge you, if you're not plugged into a life group at your local church, either join one, start one, get connected. Because when we're isolated, the battles we do in life are so much more difficult. And when we're isolated, that you're an easy target for the enemy, for sure. So in 2004, we received favor. After 6 months of having this life book at the adoption agency, we received the call that we were prepared yet so unprepared for. And the birth of our son had happened. So we went and picked up Logan from a local hospital in Dayton, and it forever changed our life. And we liked it so much that in 2006, we did it again. And for the second child, it's so much harder because everybody wants their adoptive baby to be the first child, the only child, to get all the love. And again, I think we really received God's favor. We were trying to do what God wanted us to do, and we were trying to be good parents. And in 6 months again, we received the call that Mason was born, and we went and picked him up from the hospital. At this time, we were actually, I believe we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, scouting out our next assignment. And we got a call, so we had to quickly drive back to Dayton, Ohio, to the hospital. And here's a life verse I tied to this battle. The armor of God. So here I am already into my fourth major battle before I realized I needed armor. In Ephesians 6:10 through 18, finally be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For the struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, and against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Sometimes we just need to put on our armor, even when we think we're on the mountaintop. Every single day, put on that armor because the battle will come at you when you least expect it. So here's a life lesson for this battle. Having a godly mentor in your life is absolutely critical. Jerry McClure was a phenomenal man of God, and to this day, almost 20 years later, we're still connected. He's still doing his thing. It's so powerful to have a godly mentor. Battle number 5, needs of the Air Force. So in other words, what that means is when you have your dream sheet as a military member, the needs of the military are more important than yours. Basically, yours are wants, theirs are needs. So I struggle with this because we were assigned to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I knew nothing about. We were buying a house, and it was frankly a move I didn't want to make. We got assigned there. The house wasn't ready. I hated my commute to work. It was a unique drive where I could pretty much see where I started, where I finished my drive, a 45-minute commute to work, given the bowl effect in Albuquerque, but it felt like I could never get there. There was always construction, traffic. I began to hate my job. It was doing some amazing work, but because of how I let life affect me, I began to hate my job, and in turn, the intimacy between Crystal and I became extinct. This really started the slow fade of becoming detached. Jason, again being selfish, had been shown so much favor, but I was really having a pity party, if you will. We removed one of our lifelines. We weren't really plugged into a local church. We were hunting for churches. We visited numerous churches, but we really didn't get plugged in because we constantly were searching for Beaver Creek Christian Church, and we never found it. And I'll challenge you to just get plugged in. You'll never find the church you were at before because it's so glorious. And you know, the old adage, the grass is not always greener on the other side. You can be what turns a church you don't like into a church you love by getting plugged in. And again, when you become separated from the pack, you become vulnerable. So here's a battle inside of a battle. I began to tell Crystal that I felt empty. So we were at a time as a nation where people were going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, and I was an acquisitions officer, which means I was a program manager. I dealt with some of the big contractors in the U.S., buying weapon systems, toys, to wage war, but I never went anywhere. I wanted to deploy. I felt like I was being left out, like I was empty, like I wasn't really pulling my weight. And again, I think my selfishness took over. I felt like I had to do my part, and over time, I convinced Crystal that I needed to deploy, and finally, she was supportive. My wife is so amazing, sometimes amazing to her own detriment, and she let me have my way, if you will, in this particular instance. I desperately wanted to be part of the war, and I didn't even realize spiritually and in my own home, I was already at war. But I got what I wanted. I got a 6-month deployment. I deployed to Ethiopia on a United Nations peacekeeping deployment, and I saw life-changing poverty that to this day, I can see the little children that I thought were starving, so desperately in need. But I'll tell you, sometimes as Americans, our perception is wrong. These are some of the happiest children. They didn't need anything. They didn't need the stuff that we as Americans need, but they were just happy and content with what they had because that's all they knew. They didn't know anything else. And that's something I think we miss so much here in America. But when I was there, then became really the fall for me personally. The lies about sex flooded in my brain. The fact that I wasn't capable. The fact that I was telling myself that Crystal didn't want to be with me. They manifested in my brain that God didn't have Crystal and I in his plans. And through this, it really drove me away from my wife. I began not to call. I became distant. I was isolated already in a different country. Communication was difficult. And frankly, I didn't pursue making it right. While I was away in Ethiopia, I had an affair on my wife. And I really, I crushed my wife. I had distanced myself so much that I convinced myself that my needs were more important than our needs. And in a short 6-month deployment, excuse me, I was ready to end my marriage. At this point, I had nobody. I'd successfully isolated myself. I had no connections at all to a home church while I was deployed. I had really very little relationship with Jesus at this time because I was defeated. I had successfully isolated myself. The military trains you to love them and leave them. And that's really the mindset that I even took to this with my marriage. I still struggle with it today. When you move from assignment to assignment, you jump all in, and then when your 3 or 4 years is up, you move, you communicate a little bit, keep in touch, but you just jump into the next. And then, about a month from coming home, I threw out a lifeline. Hadn't really talked to my buddy Joel very much at all, but I made a last-ditch effort, and I called him, and he called me out. In short, he basically said, "What the hell are you doing, man? Why would you do this to your wife? Why?" And I think as men, a lot of times, we're too scared. We're too fearful to ask for help. You know, an analogy that Pastor Ken in Oklahoma City gave us once that really sticks in my mind is most men can move and carry a refrigerator in and out of a house, but we never asked for help until that stupid thing is falling off the dolly. And if we would have just asked for help from the beginning, we would have safely moved that refrigerator. And in this instance, the refrigerator had already fallen off, and I'm reaching out calling for Joel to help me fix what I had so vitally just thrown away. But he helped me. He helped me walk through. He helped me reconcile. He helped me realize how important Crystal was and needed to be in my life. And he helped convince me that I was a selfish dude who needed to get right. You know, I came back from my deployment and I couldn't communicate. I suppressed it all. I simply wanted to sweep it under the rug, and my wife was just crushed, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I had lost my wife's trust. I was simply a coward. But for whatever reason, she stayed with me. She took our vows seriously. She didn't like me very much, but she loved me enough to stay with me. So here's a lesson learned through this battle. And this is a battle that I created myself. Sometimes when we face our giants, we just put the giant there ourselves. It's not a giant that has to be there. There is power in a praying spouse. You know, I wrote down here, she was disgusted with me, but she prayed for me continually. More of a testament to her than me for sure. She signed up and meant it till death do us part. Battle number 6, restoration of a broken marriage. So here we are, yet another military assignment. We got stationed or orders to Oklahoma City. We got plugged in to a local church called Heartland Community Church. We got plugged into a group, a couples class called His Needs, Her Needs. And I frankly thought it was going to be a friendship or an events type group where we'd go bowling together or hang out or go do stuff together. And oh my, was I mistaken. Cord and Kim were amazing leaders. We dove into the His Needs, Her Needs book. And boy, was it raw. We had so many issues with communication. It was so hard for us, but it's exactly what we needed as a couple. God knew exactly what he was doing. And if we just get out of the way, he can mend everything. Where I wanted to throw it away, my wife held true. It was raw, but we grew as a couple. So in 2009, our relationship is sort of on the mend, if you will. We're plugged in, we're being faithful. Pastor Jeremy at the time threw me a bone. He asked me to run a golf tournament. So I'm a program manager, so I'm like, all right, cool, that's easy. I can handle that. We'll have some fun. And really, as I look back, he gave me an inch, just a small little men's golf tournament, and I'm still taking miles today. It was an opportunity for me to use the skills that I've been taught through the military to coordinate, to lead, but really use it for the good of the kingdom, to have an opportunity to do ministry. While we were there, we launched Iron Men's Ministry, Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. And I had gotten to see that through Joel, a couple of years prior. And it's so vital as men to have other men sharpening you, encouraging you, pouring into your life. My thought process, though, was again a little selfish. I was going to fix myself and others along the way through this men's ministry. I so desperately needed it. Excuse me. And one of the struggles I had was I needed it so bad that I became unbalanced because I put so much time and energy into this men's ministry that it frankly took away from my family. Through this, I met my best friend, Alan, who's an amazing dude. He led worship. He had so many kids. He had 3 kids, beautiful wife. He just had everything together. He was an amazing man, great dad, loving husband. But what I learned through our men's ministry is he had my sin. He was also an adulterer. And really, I just was magnetized to him because I needed him and I think he needed me. And we began an accountability partnership, which was so vital and so important to both of us, to encourage each other, to keep each other accountable, and just to love each other for who we are, excuse me. He's really the guy who helped plant the seeds of Servolution in my life. He loved people. We did outreaches through the local apartments. He and my other best friend, Aaron, who owned a landscaping business, we landscaped local schools close to our church. We helped widows. Just an amazing season in my life. Also, while we were stationed in Oklahoma City, my wife began a nursing program. And I think really the stress of her choices, or the stress of my choices, excuse me, the pressure of her nursing school, and then some of her family's past come to light. My wife became a closet alcoholic. And I thought she was actually just stressed and taking anxiety pills, but most nights she would come home and just pretty much check out. And I never saw the signs that she was desperately crying out for help. Through this, in February of 2011, we got a call, again, that would change our lives. It's just amazing how God works through all the battles, through all the mountaintops, through all the valleys, how this would happen. Our 3 nieces and nephews were seized by Child Protective Services, and we got a call for help. You know, I think this here, God put a big neon sign in front of Jason's eyes and gave me a purpose. Even though I had done so much wrong, my wife was struggling, trying to make it, but he's had so much bigger calling on our lives. And I think really the battles that we both went through prepared us for just an amazing opportunity here. James 1:27 says, pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for the orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. We had an opportunity to love and care for our 3 nieces and nephews. And we went, we prayed about it for so long. We had a plan, again, that our brothers and sisters were going to each take one of the children. We'd all kind of bear the weight of helping. And God had other plans. Child Protective Services wouldn't allow the children to be split. So we had to make a huge decision. Were we willing to go from 2 children to 5 children, just like that? It was really, we really had no option because we felt it was what God wanted us to do. But oh my, does it come with so much pressure and weight because I don't think we were prepared, given that I came from a broken home, that Crystal came from a broken home, and who are we, given the mess I just shared with you, to raise these 3 additional children? But we signed up for it. And I believe God has trained us and walked with us along the way. Are we perfect? No way. No way. Are we willing? Yes, 100%. So here's some of the battles or lessons I learned through here. 1 praying spouse can save a marriage. Don't feel because you're messing up that your marriage can't be saved. Don't put your faith in man, put your faith in Jesus. And having an accountability partner prior to going into a battle is a must. And lastly, one more lesson. There's a whole bunch of lessons through this season. Men, don't wait to ask for help until the refrigerator is falling off the dolly. Ask for help before. Battle number 6, Texas. Wait, what? So I told you we got a call from CPS. Yet another military assignment comes our way, but Child Protective Services here said you have to move to Texas in order to take custody and adopt these 3 kids. You know, I had set myself up. I had worked hard in my career, and I believe my next trajectory was going to be to go to the Pentagon and do bigger, better things through my career progression, because that's what I thought I had to do. But again, God had other plans. So we had to work hard to get a military assignment, but God opened the door, and we wound up moving back to Azle, Texas. You know, we'd never really been through Azle when we were stationed here, my first Navy military assignment before. But I told Crystal that if we're coming back to Texas, we've got to have trees and we got to have water, because it is hot in Texas. So we bought ourselves a house that could accommodate our big and growing family. We also wanted to buy a house because of what we had seen through my friend Aaron, and how a house can be just an avenue to have life groups, to have opportunities for the church to gather and love on each other. And we wanted to be just a lighthouse for people to come and get connected and love on each other. But we had no plans to come back to Texas. But we came back here because we knew it was the right thing to do, to take on these 3 kids. So we went from 2 to 5 in a second. We were looking for a fresh start. We got plugged into the church at Azle. We were watching the sermons for about 6 months prior to coming here, as we waited for the military assignment process to work. But I told you, Crystal was walking through her alcohol battle. We came to a church. We kind of limped in. It's hard walking into a church with 5 kids and your marriage is in a mess. And we allowed ourselves to get offended. We came for about 6 or 8 weeks. We would walk through the doors. People would shake my hand, say hello, good morning. But I think because Crystal wasn't really ready to open up about who she was or what she was going through, she kind of stayed isolated. Nobody really talked to her. And after about 8 weeks, we left. We left the church. We went to another church for about a year. Again, though, we really felt disconnected. We never allowed ourselves to take the mask off. We felt dejected. While we were there, I tried to launch Iron Men's Ministry, what worked so well in Oklahoma City, but it just failed. And I left dejected. I felt like I really had no purpose. So in late 2012, Mitchell actually flooded our house. He put a full bar of soap in the upstairs bathroom and flooded the house. We didn't even realize the house was flooding on the second floor until we had water coming out after about 3 or 4 days, coming out on the front porch, seeping on the sidewalk. So that became the opportunity to revitalize our house. Bruce and his crew replaced every floor in our house, painted every wall in our house. But really what it did is it pulled us away. It's one of the reasons I think we really never got plugged in to the church, is because we were stuck fixing our own house. But through this process, I think seeds were really planted through Bruce. So we had a lot of opportunity. This dude can fix anything. This is Crystal's father-in-law. He talked a lot about, we had so much time together in fixing our house. He talked a lot about helping the elderly when he lived in California. And it really, just some lights began to go off kind of in my brain. Opportunities. He talked about just how they had so many opportunities to love on the elderly, be a part of their lives, make their lives better. We were invested in our house, in our kids' lives, and we were plugged into, Logan at this time was playing football. And we were at ACS football game, going to practice, just being a parent on the sideline. And here comes yet another invite. So we had kind of fallen away from church, if you will. And a friend of ours, Chance, his son played on Logan's football team. And he invited us to come back to the church at Azle. It was a simple request, not pushy. not overly in your face, but it was a request. And it really, what had happened for us was an opportunity for us to restart. Again, we found it hard to fit in. We went back. We loved the church, but we had a hard time fitting in with 5 kids. I really felt the calling to do something with the talents I had, but I didn't know how. I wore a shirt from our Servolution ministry in Oklahoma City to church one Wednesday night on a Wednesday night service, and Pastor Chad asked me, "What is that?" And it opened the doors for what Servolution is today. He just said, "Hey, we need that," and one thing led to another. We served for about a year families internal to our church who needed help getting small things from bathrooms to yards cleanup to all kinds of stuff, and it really gave me a purpose, if you will. I wrote down a verse here, Matthew 22, 37 and 38, or through 39. Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second and equally important, love your neighbor as yourself." I've walked through so much in my life, and it's really kind of all come together through this verse. He's prepared me. He's allowed me to learn so many things through program management, through fixing up our house, through seeing people in our own church in need, and just being able to kind of tie it all together. One of the things I've seen recently is be the change you want to see. Be who you needed as a kid. We often want people to come sit next to us in church before we'll do ministry with them. And kind of what I've learned is the ministry is outside the walls of the church. Go into church, be part of the pep rally, and then take that pep rally to the world and just love people where they are. My life lesson here is it's never too late to jump all in. I was 37, I think, really before I received kind of my purpose, my calling, if you will. But here's battle number 7, balance. I told you I struggled a little bit with this through the men's ministry. I've kind of grown up and trained myself to be selfish, and it's really a battle that I struggle with because people will continue to, especially as an outreach ministry, they'll continue to use you and need you, and they have no respect for your personal life, family time, and I've got to be able to say no. I've got to be able to put in the God-ordained order God, family, and all the rest, right? And I'm still learning that. Our verse for Servolution is Galatians 5:13. "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love." We've been blessed to start this ministry at our home church, and God's blessed it, and now we're using it to build community where so many people have just been absolutely amazing throughout this whole process. I step back often and I ask why? Why? Why would God show me all these battles of the church, if you will, letting me down, of my family not meeting my expectations, showing me extreme poverty, showing me letting others let me down, showing me triumphs and failures and church splits. But what I've realized is He was preparing me for ministry. I talk to Pastor Chad and Pastor Mike all the time. This is a tough job that I think without the battles that I've gone through, I wouldn't be prepared for. People attack you at every drop of the hat. They'll use you like an old washcloth. When they need you, they'll scrub. And when you become unuseful, they'll just throw you away and go get another washcloth. Ministry is tough. My struggle now is balance. You hear it all the time. If the devil can't get you, he'll make you busy. He'll distract you. He'll reorganize your priorities. And I need to continually focus on God, spouse, career, I messed it up, I can't even read. God, spouse, children, occupation, and then ministry. The demands often make me lose focus because I, in my heart of hearts, want to help everybody I possibly can. People are demanding. Here's the life lesson I have in this last battle. Where there is no battle, there is no blessing. I feel at times, especially through Servolution, we're on the cusp of absolute awesomeness or complete failure. Life is demanding. Find people that will encourage you, not tear you down. Life is difficult enough. Sometimes you'll find the biggest obstacles are the biggest opportunities. Jump in, don't be afraid. God doesn't see our failures as limitations, but opportunities to shine His glories. I really struggled when I left the military. I wanted to leave a legacy. I felt like I hadn't done a whole lot. The battles prepare you for the war. I used to fight with no armor. Then I used to use my armor to hide my wounds. Now I am healed and can fight. And finally, if you don't learn from the battle, you will repeat it. I love you guys so much, and God bless.